Okay, and now we will look at prophase. Okay, so once the cell is done with interphase, it enters into mitosis, and the first stage of mitosis is prophase. During prophase, what we have happening is that the nuclear membrane is basically breaking down. It's dissolving. Enzymes are breaking it down because the chromosomes need to ultimately get into two different cells. And they can't do that if they're stuck inside of a nucleus. So the nuclear membrane we usually show as dotted lines or dashed lines. So that's the nuclear membrane that's breaking down. Also, the nucleolus is breaking down. So the nucleolus is also breaking down. And these structures called fibers are going to be coming out from either pole of the cell. And you'll see they are going to act kind of like puppet strings at some point. They will start pulling the chromosomes around. But for right now, these fibers start to, I'm just going to say they start to shoot out from opposite poles. And then the chromatin which was very thin and invisible in the phase before, is now, instead of being thin, it's getting shorter and shorter and shorter and fatter. And so it's becoming visible. And so you can see the chromosomes actually look kind of like what I say is kind of like gummy worms. So the chromosomes will look something like this. And they're not really organized anyway in the cell. They are just kind of in the nucleus. I like to say that they look kind of like a bowl of worms. So the chromatin is getting shorter and thicker and becomes visible for the first time. Okay, so then we would call them chromosomes when you can see them. All right, the next phase is called metaphase. Now, I want to talk about what a double-stranded chromosome is. A double-stranded chromosome is the result of replication. So you'll have one part of your DNA. If I could draw a little double helix in there, I would. And then that chromosome copies itself. So you have another one right here. It's identical. And it's held together by a little structure called a centromere. Centro, it's all one word. C-E-N-T-R-O-M-E-R-E. It's this little snap-like structure. Okay, so these double-stranded chromosomes are actually lined up in the middle, and I am just going to draw them like X's to make this easier to do. And we're going to say that this cell has 4 of them. Okay? So there are 4 chromosomes lined up in the middle. And those fibers that we talked about up here by now have shot all the way out. They're very thin, little microtubule structures, and the fibers are shooting out to the centromere of each chromosome from this side, and they're shooting out to the middle part of the chromosome on the other side. Now, I like to say that these are kind of like little fishing lines, and that there's a fishing guy here and a fishing guy here, and they cast out all of these lines, and they are snagging the middle part of the chromosome called the centromere. Okay, and so in metaphase, those little fishing lines, we call them fibers, are hooked up to the middle of each chromosome. All right, so what do we want to say? The double-strand chromosomes are lined up in the middle of the cell. And we call that the equator, even if it's going up and down. Let's see, the fibers are lengthening, shooting out longer and longer, and attach to each chromosome. And you'll see in the next phase, those fibers are going to act like puppet strings. All right, so the next phase is called anaphase. And in anaphase, these little fibers that were shooting out are now going to be shortening. So it's as if the fisher person is reeling them in, and so I'm drawing them short. And the chromosome breaks in two. That little centromere that's holding it together right here splits, and each little part of the chromosome kind of gets dragged through the cytoplasm of the cell. And so they look something like this. Okay, imagine that they're being dragged through water, so they're kind of going to look like so. All right, so in anaphase, the centromere splits, these fibers shorten, the fibers kind of play tug of war. So these fibers get shorter, the chromosomes move away, and you can see what's going to happen. We're going to end up with two cells, and each cell is going to have a complete set of chromosomes in it. All right, so the single-strand chromosomes move toward opposite poles. In other words, they move away from each other. Now that's your hint. They move away from the middle. That's your hint for anaphase. They move away from each other. Okay? The fibers are shortening, and they're acting like puppet strings. Okay? They are shortening, and they are pulling the chromosome parts to opposite poles. Opposite poles of the cell, in this case being kind of like the west and east pole. All right, so on this page, things to remember. Prophase, like the bowl of worms. Metaphase, chromosomes in the middle. Anaphase, chromosomes pulling away. Okay?